Hello, this short video is meant to help you with the first part of the next step of the writing process, global revision. So once you've written your rough draft of the consumer artifact analysis essay, it is then time to turn your attention to step 4 of the writing process, which is revising, editing, citing, and formatting your paper in preparation for submission here next Monday. So when we talk about this fourth step of the writing process, we do want to start with what's called global revision. And what we mean by global revision is really focusing on the major elements of the essay, the most important parts of your essay, and taking some time to analyze those elements, being able to point to them, locating them, knowing where they're at, and then evaluating them, asking yourself, how strong, how effective are these elements, and how can I make these elements stronger and more effective to improve my overall essay? So when we are focusing on global revision, and again, you should be focusing mostly on global revision here this week. We will also be, once we're done with global revision, we'll also turn our attention to local revision, which is more focused on sentence level and word level revisions, and then also moving on to editing and citing and formatting. And all those parts of the step are also important, and you should take time to do that work as well. But most of the time this week should be focused on global revision, because that's really focusing on, again, the major elements of the essay, the parts of the essay that are going to be the most impactful in terms of how good and how successful the essay is. So the first thing that we want to take a look at when we are talking about analyzing and evaluating our essay at the global level, we want to start with the basic requirements for the essay. And so here we start with length. So the first thing you want to ask yourself as you analyze and evaluate your essay is, is the essay long enough? Recognizing that every assignment we have in this class has a minimum word count, and the minimum word count for this first essay is 1,400 words, so 1,400 words. And again, these are the words in your essay. So words in your works cited page don't count, and technically the heading and title don't count either. But again, that's just a few words. So just keep it in the back of your mind that at the end of your work here on this essay, your essay has to be over 1,400 words in length, or you'll automatically get an incomplete and you'll have to revise it to get it to that minimum word count. And we'll talk more about this when we get to the support part of this page and the support part of global revision. But if you can't get to 1,400 words, there's always ways to add more quality support, more analysis, more evidence to your paper to make it stronger without having to resort to padding out a conclusion or bringing in fluff or inconsequential material. So if you are struggling with minimum word count, again, reach out to me and we can find ways to add more quality material to your paper to improve it and get to that minimum word count. All right, so the second thing that we want to take a look at in terms of basic requirements are the number of outside sources that are required. And for this particular assignment, this first formal essay, you are required to bring in 3 relevant and reputable outside sources into your essay. And one of them has to be from one of our MPC library databases, just so that way you get used to using the library databases, because they're such an important and valuable resource when it comes to research on a college campus, either here at MPC or at a 4-year college. So familiarizing yourself with a library database, a college library database, is going to be really important going forward, not only for this class, but for every class that asks you to do research. You'll always find relevant and reputable, specifically reputable sources in our MPC library databases. So again, just as you are working this week on improving your paper, make sure that you do have the minimum 3 outside sources. Again, you can have more outside sources if you want than 3, but you do have to have a minimum in order to qualify for a complete for this assignment. And actually going back to the minimum word count, that's also the case here as well. You're more than welcome to go beyond 1,400. And in fact, I encourage you to go beyond 1,400 words. There really isn't a maximum for this assignment. But of course, you don't want to keep it within reason, within the 2,000 words perhaps. But definitely feel free to go over 1,400 words. That is a minimum word count for the assignment. All right, so when we talk about the elements of an essay, of an academic essay, the first thing that we talk about is point support. In other words, we're going to make a point and we're going to support that point. And really all good writing comes down to this basic principle. And when we're talking about a formal essay, that point is its thesis. And so what we want to make sure when we are analyzing this element of our essay is we want to make sure, one, that we have a thesis, and two, is it in the right place, and three, again, evaluating it to see how effective the thesis is. And so I have just a number of questions here to help you analyze and evaluate your thesis to make sure that it's as clear and as strong as it can be. I think that the most important thing when thinking about revising your thesis is just to make sure that it's focused, that it's clear, and that it represents what your essay is actually trying to do. And so when you're reading over your thesis, again, you could have written a thesis for your rough draft, but be willing to go back and revise the thesis if you feel like your ideas have changed, or if there's a clearer and more sharply focused way of expressing your big idea. And remember that the thesis really should capture the big idea of the essay, the social and cultural significance that you're trying to persuade your readers of over the course of the essay. The second element that we want to analyze and evaluate really isn't something that we can point to like a thesis. This is what's called unity. And unity as a concept is just the connection between the various elements of your essay. So for example, it would be like the connection between your thesis and your support, making sure that all of the support of your essay is working to support directly the thesis, and that your thesis in turn reflects all of the work that you're doing in your support paragraph. So there's unity. So it feels like the entire paper is unified under your big idea, your thesis. And the unity also applies at the paragraph level. So making sure that all of your evidence and your analysis works to support the topic sentence of each one of your support paragraphs. That also is an important part of unity. So when we drop down to the third concept here, the third element of an academic essay, support, it really is, again, that other element of the basics of effective writing, point support. And most of your revision is going to happen here, right? So your support are your supporting paragraphs that are presenting supporting ideas for your thesis, and the evidence, specific evidence to support your thesis, and the analysis that you're doing of that evidence, again, to make the connections between your evidence and your ideas. So when we take a look at the support paragraphs, just make sure that each one of your support paragraphs has a very clear supporting idea, and that we talk about that being captured in what's called a topic sentence. So making sure every one of your support paragraphs has a topic sentence, that it focuses the specific evidence in each one of your paragraphs, and then it connects all of that back to your thesis. So making sure that each one of your paragraphs has a topic sentence, and then it captures what's going on in that paragraph, and it connects it back to your thesis. And then just making sure that each one of your support paragraphs has enough support. So when we talk about a fully developed and effective support paragraph, we're really talking about at least a half a page of written material, usually an average of 3/4 of a page. And so we really do want to bring in at least 2 to 3 pieces of specific evidence, and then the analysis that goes on after, that you bring in after the evidence, to talk about the evidence and connect it directly back to your ideas. Now, remember when we talk about that evidence, what constitutes good specific evidence for a support paragraph, we're really talking about those outside sources that we just talked about. Those 3 outside sources, maybe more, but then also your personal experiences, your personal knowledge, your observations, and the experiences maybe of people that you know. Don't underestimate these as effective pieces of evidence to support ideas. And in fact, they can be really great complements to the outside sources. So for each one of your support paragraphs, look to bring in at least 2 to 3 pieces of specific evidence, either an outside source or personal experience, and then making sure that you do that follow-up analysis that connects the evidence back to your ideas. So it's very clear to your reader how the evidence supports your ideas. Don't make your reader do that work. Do that work for them. That's really part of your job. So we do have a section here focused on sources. We did talk about making sure you have the minimum 3 outside sources, making sure that one of them is from an MPC library database. And we also want to make sure that those sources really are doing necessary work, right? That they're supporting ideas or they have a real role to play. So asking yourself again, like, what is the role that this source is playing, and how can I more effectively connect it to my ideas, perhaps through analysis? There is some information here about citing sources, but we'll talk more about that at a later step or a later part of step 4 when we talk about citing sources. There's a whole page on that, and we'll talk about that there. Dropping down here, we haven't talked a lot about organization and coherence, but I wanted to include them here because they are technically a part of global revision. We'll get more into these concepts in the next unit. But organization at least at this stage of our development, we're really just looking at the order of our support paragraphs and asking ourselves, is this the most effective order of paragraphs? Or is there, do we need to rearrange paragraphs for a better effect? So just taking a couple of minutes to think about your paragraph order and asking yourself, is this the most effective order for my paragraphs? As far as coherence, again, this is going to be a concept that we explore a little bit more in the next unit, but coherence really is kind of tied to unity in a sense that it's trying to connect ideas to each other or connect sentences to each other, or even words to each other. And really, most coherence, when we talk about coherence as an element, most of that is done naturally. You bring in transitions between sentences, you bring in transitions within sentences, you're connecting ideas as one sentence flows into the next. Really, what we want to be conscious of when it comes to coherence at the revision stage is, one, making sure that we do have a nice flow to our writing, that doesn't feel like it's choppy or it jumps around, that we can follow along pretty easily. But then also making sure that we've got transitions between paragraphs. And usually we do that work at the beginning of each support paragraph. We connect it back to a previous idea, connect it to the thesis as we head into that next support paragraph. But again, more on these concepts next unit. And then finally, to round out our work here with global revision, we do want to just spend a little bit of time analyzing and evaluating our introduction and conclusion, and asking ourselves, how can we make these paragraphs more effective? They do serve important functions in a formal academic essay. Introductions, again, introduce your readers to your topic. They lead us into the thesis. Conclusions wrap things up by restating the thesis there at the end and then giving some kind of final thought on whatever concept that you're working on, as a way to naturally and gracefully bring the essay to an end. These aren't very important to the overall success of the essay. Really, the important part is the thesis and your support paragraphs. Again, going back to point support. But it's important to spend at least a little bit of time making sure that your introduction, how you're introducing your topic, how you're transitioning into your thesis, how you're restating your thesis in the conclusion, how you're naturally ending the essay, taking some time to take a look at those and seeing if you can't make them stronger and more effective will make the paper just a little bit better. All right, well, that's it for this video. Good luck with your global revisions. And once you're done with that, you feel pretty confident with the thesis and your unity and your support, your organization, your coherence, you feel like your introduction and conclusion are pretty strong, then it's time to move on to local revision, revising at the sentence and word level to see if we can improve our paper. Until then, good luck, everyone.